be the project manager on this project. I know that a few of you have acknowledged that you did get the agenda for today's meeting. We posted it on the town website and on BidNet. I've got it up on screen now, and I'll be sharing it as much as I can as I share other screens. But if you want to, if you weren't already aware and you want to download the agenda for this morning's meeting, you can go to BidNet or our website. At BidNet, it was done as a communication in their system. It's on the communication tab. And then it's just another document, another PDF on the town website. So today's meeting format's going to be a presentation by myself, both verbal and with visual descriptions of the project. I'll be sharing, as I mentioned, I'll be sharing my screen. We can take Q&A along the way. There's also a session for Q&A at the end of the agenda. Just a few points about virtual meeting etiquette. We've got a number of people here, so we just want to make sure that we extend each other some courtesy. As I'm in the virtual meeting format, as I'm sure you're all aware, try not to talk over others. Everyone will be able to ask questions. If you have a question, try to use the raise the hand feature when you wish to speak. We will ask you to try to remain muted until you're recognized. You can unmute and then mute again when you're done. Feel free to use the chat feature. We'll try to keep an eye on that as well. And at the very least, we'll catch up at the end of the meeting with anything that we may have missed along the way. Let's see, I know I'm going to shift around here just a little bit so that my head's not turned. I'm working on multiple screens, so maybe if I'm positioned a little better here, I won't have my eyes too far off the second screen. The meeting is going to be recorded today, and it'll be made available through BidNet and the town website so that you and others can revisit it if you feel like you need to. And then just as a reminder, because of the virtual nature of today's meeting, we are not going to have a group site visit. I encourage you to visit the site on your own and use the period of asking questions through written submissions to get your questions answered. So there are a few folks besides myself on the call that, well, I think we ought to do introductions all the way around. There's a few folks from Public Works, and I know I can't see everybody lined up the way my screen is illustrating right now. So if I'll start with myself, at least acknowledging that my contact information is also on the agenda as it is in the bidding documents. And why don't we have anybody else from Public Works introduce themselves, if you don't mind unmuting and doing so quickly.
Kevin McEachern, Public Works Operations for Estes Park. Nice to see you all.
Brian Berg, Park Supervisor. We take care of all the landscaping and stuff that you guys are going to be digging in.
Good morning. I'm Vanessa Soulsby, the Parking and Transit Manager, also in Public Works.
And just a quick note to that, if I may, just to point out, Vanessa is what we might really consider the owner of the project because she's managing the parking division. And these are parking related signs. She be the boss.
I'm Matt Eisenberg. I'm the GM of the car park. We're the parking operator. I work for Vanessa. I have to hop off in about 15 minutes or so.
And I'm Megan, and I work for Public Works as well.
Okay, anybody else on the call from Public Works? With apologies to Justin Carney, I did not get his name on at a bullet point on the agenda, but Justin is the supervisor in our streets division. And so he'll also be somebody that you, the bidders may have some contact with during the execution of the project. E-Holdings is our consultant on this. Chad, why don't you pop in and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Chad Williams. I work for E-Holdings. We helped with the design on the project.
Okay. I know we have a number of interested bidders on the video call, and maybe there's somebody just on the phone. Why don't we start with those on the video call, if you don't mind. Take a moment and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name's Scott Shreve. I'm with the Digital Frontier. I was talking to you earlier, David, about that, but I was kind of lost there for a minute. So, but we're a signs and graphics company and doing, looking forward to working on this bid.
I'm Mika Myrick with Front Range Signorama. I'm their project manager.
Thank you. Welcome. Go ahead, Travis. It looks like you've got your hand up.
Good morning. My name is Travis Taylor. I'm with ProPrint in Design here in Colorado Springs. Looking forward to earning your business.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us this morning. Anybody else on the video call that hasn't introduced himself yet? Okay.
I'm Tom Pepper, also with ProPrint and Design, Colorado Springs.
Okay, welcome, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else that hasn't introduced himself yet? All right, well then we'll move on. I'll scroll here on the agenda. If anybody notices somebody popping in late, and I might miss them, if you don't mind helping me recognize them, I'd like to get them to acknowledge their, introduce themselves and acknowledge their presence. So project overview. The bidding documents are comprised of 3 key resources: the project manual, the project booklet, and the project data file. And we'll be looking at each of those a little bit more in detail here as we go through. The purpose and goal for the project is stated on page 3 of the project booklet, and I'll jump there right now. So I switched screens or switch documents. Did that work out okay for everybody? You can see something new. I'm still a rookie at this Zoom stuff, so bear with me if I goof up. But here's our summary of our purpose and goals for the pilot program. I won't read it word for word, but basically we're trying to help orient visitors to the new seasonal paid parking system. And that's what's really the driver of this. We're going to be implementing paid parking in Estes Park for the very first time. And we really feel like we need to provide them with some good quality signage and key locations to help direct them to where they want to go. I'll let you all read the rest of that. I'm not sure that it's all important, but I think that's the real key to understanding why we're doing what we're doing. The scope of work. I'm going to jump to the invitation to bid now. In a two-sentence summary, this is our scope of work for the project to manufacture and install directional and destination signage, wayfinding signs related to parking lots throughout the downtown and near downtown area. And there'll be some other minor related signing tasks. So that kind of sums it all up, and there's a lot of detail, as you're well aware. Much more detail to the project, and we'll spend some time talking about some of that. Our schedule, if you've had a chance to look at the invitation to bid, you've already seen our layout, and I'll just run through this pretty quick because this is all pretty important. We're here now today at the March 11 pre-bid conference on Thursday. I don't know how many of you saw the old version of that, but I did put out something that said Wednesday, March 11th. I apologize for any confusion that may have been there on that. A week from today is our deadlines for questions. The following Monday is when we will be issuing our final addendum. And then bids are due a few days later, 2 weeks from today. We're measuring time on local time. Somewhere in this timeline, we're going to go to daylight savings time. So that's why we're using our clock. It's mountain time. It doesn't matter whether it's standard time or daylight savings time. No extra hours in there for anybody. After we get the bid opening, the bids opened on Thursday, the 25th. We'll be moving through the contracting award and contracting phase of things. We're anticipating things will go smoothly. We've got a pretty aggressive schedule here to get to a notice to proceed and sign contracts in about 2 weeks. A little over 2 weeks after, well, 2 weeks after the notice of award, a little over 2 weeks after the bid opening. And then there's about 5 weeks to substantial completion and another week to final completion. So the bidding documents, let's zoom through those pretty quick. We're already in the Public Works document. Table of contents has got a good summary of everything that's there. Invitation to bid, I think, is pretty straightforward. We've already touched on, at least pre-bid wise, that's probably all the most important stuff we've already talked about. Instructions for bidders. There's lots of important stuff in here for you guys and gals. This list here is what will end up being the official list of bidding documents when we get around to signing a contract. So pay attention to all of these documents. Everything except the addenda has been issued, to this point.
Hey, David, I just wanted to let you know we did have a Frank Cordova and join the meeting so that you're aware.
Oh, well, thank you. Frank, do you want to introduce yourself? Everybody else did, but we'll only make you do it now.
Yeah, hi, I'm Frank Cordova with ProPrint Design as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Frank, for joining us. This project has one unusual feature of it. Some of you may be aware, some of you may not, but we did advertise this last spring. In fact, our pre-bid meeting was just about a year ago. We're a week shy of a year, or it was March 18th a year ago when we had the pre-bid meeting. For all practical purposes, it's a similar project, but we've made some changes to it. So if you're aware of that project, ignore everything. Pay attention only to the 2021 bidding documents. Lots of details and instructions here. We will be issuing addenda, hopefully one, if not, hopefully two. We are going to be asking for questions in writing. Obviously, that's a real straightforward way for us to keep track of the questions and provide thorough answers that are distributed to everybody. There's a bid guarantee required. There's some bonds required as a part of the contract process. We already talked about opening bids. We do have a couple of forms for the bidders to fill out. First one is this bidder's qualification and qualifications and data. So we're looking for the bidders to provide some background on the firm and projects. There's also a separate sheet for subcontractors. So that's the next form here, looking for you to identify who your subcontractors may be, so that we can be aware. Seeing this here, let me just take a sidebar. All contractors doing business in the town do need to have a town business license. So that includes the prime contractor, the bidder, and any of the subs. And so those business licenses can be obtained online through the town's website. If you go to the town clerk's webpage, there are some easy links to find out how to do that. Oops. The next form is the bid proposal. So this is something you'll have to fill out and complete as you submit your bid. Probably not very much different from what you've seen before, looking for some basic information and acknowledgements. Sign and notarize. And then the bid schedule. There's actually two of these in the set of documents. What we're looking at is part of the PDF set. We've also provided you with an Excel spreadsheet as a part of the documents that you download. You're welcome to fill this out by hand, or you're welcome to use the Excel spreadsheet and let the spreadsheet help you do the math. But I think this is pretty straightforward. But while I'm here, let me just do another little sidebar. Obviously, we've got, well, I see my first typo, something we'll have to clarify in an addenda. This first line item is actually sign removals. I apologize for the typo, but we'll clarify that. There are some ground signs that we ask you to remove as a part of your work. There's 4 of them, and they're described in the locations of those 4 signs are described in the Google Earth file. We have, again, apologies for the typo here on the item. We do have 10 types of signs that we've identified. There are 2 types of auto-directional sizes. And we're real scientific here. We've got a large version and a small version. There are two types of destination signs. Again, small and large. We'll talk some more about those distinguishing features in a little bit. We have three types of mast arm signs, signs that are going to be mounted on signal pole mast arms. There's large, medium, and small. And then we have some add-on panels that say visitor information or visitor info. And again, we have a large version and a small version of that. And then another add-on panel that's a free, so the message is free and no installation is required on that sign. We're looking for those panels so that we can add them when we get to the end of the seasonal paid parking period. We can cover up the paid message with a free message. The construction contract is just a template. We'll obviously have a lot of blanks to fill in when we get a low, down to a low bidder and a bid award. But this will be the basic contract that'll be coming your way as a successful bidder. And I'm not going to go through every page of this. It's, I don't know, 10 or 15 pages long altogether. The next section is the general conditions. There's another 10 or 15 or 20 pages of general conditions, probably not unlike what you're used to seeing in other projects. I'm not going to go through anything in here. I think it's all pretty straightforward. But if there's any questions on that, you can get clarification through the question and answer process. The general conditions are followed by the special conditions. Sorry if I'm making anybody queasy as I scroll through things here. So the special conditions, there's just a couple of pages of these. We're emphasizing our expectations as it relates to a project schedule. We're emphasizing that how we're measuring the contract time. We do have a long list of work prohibited dates. This is an annual calendar that we would normally include. If all goes well, everything but the first bullet point is going to be outside the time frame of this contract. But we just drop this in as a standard. As it relates to the first bullet point, this Rotary Duck Race Festival is a fundraiser by the local Rotary Club. It is on Saturday, May 1st. You wouldn't normally be working on a Saturday, so we're just reemphasizing here that if that becomes necessary on your part, some work in some parts of town may be allowed, but in the areas where the festival is going, which is a good portion of the downtown area, it's going to be tough to allow any work in that area on that date. Some more listing of general expectations. Well, related to the Saturday work, here's our work zone requirements. Normal work days is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. Weekend work or holiday work needs special permission, so plan accordingly. There is this construction zone on US 36. Some of you are probably aware of it. It's not nearly as active as it was a year ago, but it is still, they still are occurring or incurring temporary lane closures as they do some ongoing work. I'm not sure if that's ready to wrap. I'm not sure when that'll wrap up. I'm guessing it's winding down pretty significantly now, but that may be something you need to account and anticipate. Stormwater quality. It is your responsibility as a contractor to determine whether a stormwater discharge from the state is required for this project. If it's not required, then fine. If it is required, we're going to expect you to have it and provide us with some documentation. Health and safety measures related to COVID-19. I wanted to touch on this because this obviously is something we're all dealing with. We've all been dealing with it for a year now. And even though things are getting better, it's still something we all have to be aware of as far as how we behave as individuals, how we behave with our crews, how we interact with each other. The underlying message here is that we at the town of Estes Park expect our contractors to follow all state and county and local guidelines. As long as you're following the guidelines, things are going to be fine with us. There are a couple of exhibits that are attached to the special conditions. They're there for your reference. There's some documents from different state agencies that will help give you some insights to part of our expectations. I mentioned the Google Earth project file a little while ago. We'll get to that in a minute in a little more detail. The liquidated damages is based, according to CDOT's formula, it's based on contract value, and based on what we expect this contract value to be, we've gone ahead and pulled that out of their table. But you can cross-reference this section of the CDOT specs if you need any further clarifications. So those are those exhibits I'm scrolling through now. And we get to the project special provisions. These are some specifications that where we at the local level have elected to modify the state specifications. I'm not going to go through each and every one of these. I'll let you absorb them and offer written questions if you have any. I think they're all pretty straightforward. The most significant you'll find is in this section 614. 614 is a section of the CDOT specs that deals with signage and traffic control, routine or regular traffic control, not construction zone traffic control. So we've inserted a lot of additional details in there that we feel are necessary to focus on our special project that's dealing expansively with wayfinding signage. So do in particular pay close attention to the contents in there. I will scroll down to that section right now to highlight a couple of things. In the measurement section, 614.13, this goes through and describes how we're measuring things for payment. And so this will be insightful to all the bidders to know that what work is incidental, what work is to be included in different pay items, all related back to that to the bid schedule that we saw earlier. So be sure you read through all of these details. Here where this first section talks about the type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4 signs, and the things that we are expecting you to include as costs related to those pay items. And then there's a separate section for the type 5, 6, and 7 signs, and all of the things that we expect you to include as pay items are in those particular pay items. And then there's a third section here for the type 8 and type 9 signs and the things that relate. There's a lot of similarity between these, but there are some differences, and that's why they're outlined separately. The type 10 signs are those add-on signs that don't have installation, and so that's the easiest. It's only got one bullet point. We're just looking for you to fabricate them and deliver them to us. And then related to that is the section 614.14, where we're emphasizing here that these are all measured on in each location. And there is some clarification up above that says each really means a sign location. Some locations have a single-sided sign, and some locations have 2 sign faces on either side of the mounting posts. So we're not talking about the number of sign faces, we're talking about the number of sign locations. And the distinction between whether a location has 1 sign or 2 is detailed in both the booklet and in the Google Earth file. So that'll help you keep your inventory straight as you tally up sign faces to a total of sign locations, and then start to be able to fill in your bid schedule with your unit prices. And then there's a section on construction zone traffic control. These are some modifications that we feel are important to detail because of the things we look for locally. Now let me elaborate on this a little bit. Some of the work is along CDOT highways, and some of the work is along town roadways. As it relates to traffic control, really there's going to be no distinction. A CDOT right-of-way permit or a CDOT special use permit will be required for signage along the CDOT right-of-ways, and a town right-of-way permit will be required for installation of signs along town right-of-ways. Let me start with the town right-of-way permit process. A member of my staff, Ryan Barr, is that right-of-way permit contact. Contractors will be responsible for getting that right-of-way permit. There will be the fee associated will be waived. The application process and approval process will be very simple and straightforward in dealing with Ryan as an internal town project. The CDOT permit will require both the town and the successful bidder, the contractor, to work together on. We will be starting that at the town level with CDOT here in the near future. We're working on the draft of the permit right now. However, CDOT's already advised us that they will want the contractor's signature on the final permit. So the final permit will not be issued by the time we get to construction, but it will be necessary for the contractor to provide some supplemental information to CDOT along with a signature on the permit application when that time comes. So it should be a pretty quick turnaround on the part of the state when we get to an award and the contracting phase, because we'll be starting that process with them ahead of time. As it relates to traffic control plans are required for each of your work sites. They may need to be customized traffic control plans, or maybe it's a uniformly applicable control, plan that deals with generally deals with pedestrians and vehicular traffic control at each of the work sites. Obviously, there's a lot of work sites scattered around, and there's some similarities between them. And maybe there's a way that can be presented in a single typical traffic control plan, or maybe 3 or 4 typical traffic control plans, depending on the circumstances. We're not trying to make this overly difficult. We're all for streamlining the process, but what's really important is that we're protecting the public, the traveling public, both the pedestrians and those in mobile, in a mobile a vehicle or a bicycle that are on wheels. So do anticipate getting involved in both of those permit processes once a notice of award is made. And that, I think, brings us to the last item, and this is the CDOT standard special provisions. These are CDOT exceptions or updates to their own standards, their own specifications. So these all are available through the CDOT website and will apply. So let me move on to the booklet. There's some introductory information regarding our sign design approach. You can digest that and ask questions as needed. This table here gives another summary of the 10 types of signs that we have, along with some quantities and some cross references to other pages farther down in the booklet. Here's the first of our typical signage. These are the two types of auto-directional signs. Gives you some basic sizes and some basic expectations on the posts and the breakaway feature and how they might all come together. It also gives a bit of a scale perspective to things. The next set of typicals are for the destination signs. Same sort of setup. There's two basic signs, little difference in size, and some information as it relates to what goes into the sign, what went into the sign design, and how some of the installation requirements may apply. Then our typical, there's a sheet for the typicals on the mast arms, 3 basic sizes, and this gives you an idea of how they relate to each other, perspective and into the real world with the mast arm mounting. Sign types 8 and 9 are the visitor information panels that are highlighted here in the red box, the red dash box. There's 6 locations total where we're adding this visitor information panel to one of the already installed or specified destination or auto-directional sign. So a little bit of a adaptation there to know where that sign panel goes. These are the locations where they're anticipated to be installed. On the free panels, this is where I was saying we've got a free panel that's going to superimpose itself over the paid message here. And the locations are not so important to you as a bidder as it is to just confirm that this is how we came up with 19. I think it's 18 panels. Anyway, 18 or 19, the count is there. Here's some more details as it relates to the graphics of our signs and what we expect as far as spacing and heights and letter size and letter height. This may not be all the detail that's absolutely necessary, but it's a large step forward, and anything that isn't already identified here can be addressed as a part of the shop drawing submittal and approval stage to make sure that we've got everything absolutely squared away as far as widths and heights and colors and dimensions and panel cuts and special cuts and so forth. More of the same information on the left side of the page as it relates to the smaller signs, the 6 other types of smaller signs. On the right side of the page, let me talk about this for a little bit. There are a small number of signs that we're expecting to be mounted on existing light poles or existing utility poles. So these 2 pictures here are there just as a typical example of 2 of the several locations where we are expecting poles to be mounted on existing, signs to be mounted on existing poles. So look at the Google Earth file to identify where those locations are so that you can be sure you understand the numbers and the types of poles that we're asking you to mount to. It'll be the contractor's responsibility to determine what mounting system it's going to take to put a sign in that location. And then this picture here is just an example of one of our mast arm locations. We have 3 intersections where we're doing those mast arm work. And in this case, we would be asking you to remove this street name sign and this green on white parking sign, and then replace it with just the street names, the new street name sign. But those are all detailed in the Google Earth file for those 3 intersections, 12 total mast arm locations. This next sheet has some details on our icons that are part of the artwork on mostly the destination signs. Most of that should be fairly straightforward. And you can ask questions in writing for any other clarifications. This map is just a preliminary actually, this is the 2020 parking map. There is a 2021 parking map that I missed getting inserted, so we'll make that available through addenda or through an addendum. But this is just here for reference so that you can get an idea of where we have free parking lots and where we have paid parking lots.
Hey, David, the graphic is accurate. That is the 2021 parking map. I think the label is just wrong on the page, so I'll make a note of that for the addenda.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that clarification, Vanessa. Sorry, I didn't catch it earlier. I thought we had inserted it, but obviously I didn't even read it very closely. This is a snapshot of the Google Earth file view. So this, and at a glance on in a hard copy sense, a non-dynamic file sense, you can get an idea of how these different sign locations are scattered around through our downtown and near downtown area. Access to the Google Earth file is real convenient through the QR code and the link provided here. And then we get into some narrative on construction documentation, specification type information from e-holdings. So you can read through that. A couple of things to highlight here is that we are going to have some pre-fabrication submittals to go through. So be sure that you understand those. There is an element of structural design that's the contractor's responsibility. Several components go into that Wind load is probably the most significant factor, but even wind load aside, we expect you to provide us with verification that sign panel thickness and anchoring systems of the panel to the posts are all going to be suitable for routine, long life, and through useful life, and also will apply to CDOT wind loads. That'll be a part of, well, obviously CDOT's going to be interested in that as a part of their permit process. And obviously we have the same interest in preserving signs from not being insufficiently prepared to sustain the winds that we have in our area. Some more discussion here about permits, the CDOT and town permits. Probably most of this is pretty routine for you guys who are sign specialists. So I'll let you sort through what might not be clear to you and submit any questions through written inquiries. Sight distance triangle is something we're also going to have to coordinate with. Every sign is going to be in some location that has a potential for impacting the sight visibility of moving traffic. The signs at the entrances to parking lots, the destination signs, are probably the ones most susceptible to that. But even the auto-directional signs may have, depending on their location, may have some impact. So we're going to have to make sure that moving traffic can see traffic, all other moving traffic, and even stop traffic that's getting ready to enter the road, and vice versa. That stop traffic on a side street or a side driveway has a clear shot of visibility to see all approaching traffic. The calculation process is not all that difficult, but it does involve a bit of analysis on a per site basis. This is going to involve some field fit. We've done our best to locate signs where we think they're not going to cause a conflict, but the left and right, the horizontal location of the sign, as well as the vertical dimension to the bottom of the sign, all come into play, and there's going to have to be some field fit verification on every sign. So that'll involve some coordination with me and some effort on the part of the contractor to prepare that information, and so that we can in the field have a solid verification that we're not creating a site visibility issue for moving or stop traffic as it involves pedestrians, bicycles, and vehicles. The other thing I'll mention, as long as we're talking about coordination at each site, nearly every sign that we're going to be installing is in or near a planted bed, a landscaped bed. And every one of those landscape beds has irrigation in it. So one extremely important element of the project is that there be coordination with Brian Berg, who was introduced himself earlier, from the Parks Division, or one of his staff. Brian will be the starting point of contact. That there be coordination to make sure that not only are regular utilities located, but that, so to speak, private utilities, in this case, landscape irrigation, is located to the best that anybody can do it. And then that the process of excavating and backfilling doesn't damage the irrigation piping any more than can be avoided. And more importantly or just as importantly as avoiding it is if it is damaged, we want to make sure it's repaired before it's covered back up. The irrigation system is not active now. Obviously, it's still winter. It probably won't be active when at least some of this installation is done. And the last thing any of us need is a major leak in the irrigation once they go to turn on the irrigation after we're done with working in a site. So that's going to be an important contractor town coordination item. The Appendix A has some more details on CDOT standards, graphic standards, and then Appendix B has a detailed sign face for every sign. So this is one of those resources where I mentioned earlier that you can look at an individual sign and see what's on, what we're expecting the sign face to look like. And where you see a distinction between single-sided and double-sided, here's an example here. We've identified a single-side sign in this type, and then this is the way we've identified a double-sided sign, a sign location with two sign panels. They're identified as side A and side B. So that should help you make sure that you've got a good count on the number of sign panels versus the number of sign locations, which is the bid item count. And I won't go through each of these, but again, you can digest any questions you have and relay them to us in writing. So that's the booklet, and let me do the Google Earth file. Can you all see the Google Earth file now? Yes, no?
I'm not seeing it, David. I don't know about everybody else, but I still see the booklet.
All right, I guess I have to switch. Hang on. Let me stop sharing and then let me share again. Okay, how about now? Do you see the Google Earth file?
Now I see it. I think.
Yes.
Very good. So when you get into the Google Earth file, you'll have access to a table of contents. And this table of contents will take you to a view of each sign. I'm not going to go through every sign panel, but just as an example, you'll see a pinpoint that will represent where we think is pretty close to the desired location of the sign, subject to that field fit discussion I discussed earlier. And you'll get some information about each sign that's somewhat, well, it's all important, but it's some of this is unique or at least different from other sign locations. You'll see that there's a mention of whether it's single-sided or double-sided. There are some removals nearby. We'll make mention that who's going to do that. We'll advise that I think in all cases they're perpendicular, but we're just going to provide clarification that we want it installed perpendicular to the road. The site distance calculations are dependent on speed limits. So we're providing the speed limit for use and reference. We've identified whose permit is required. And here's just kind of a side note that's unique to this location only. This intersection here with the big pork chop island in the middle is in the process of being reconstructed. And although they're on a winter hiatus right now, come closer to April and May, they'll be doing traffic signal pole installation there. Let me find one that talks about the ground-based sign removal. that I think is this one. So you can see as you click on something in the table of contents, it takes you to a new sign location. The sign location will always be pretty close to the center of the view. And in this case, I wanted to highlight 2 of the 4 locations that we talk about the contractor being responsible for removal. In this location, we're putting the new sign on the east side of this driveway. Just to the west side of this driveway, there is an existing old faded overhead or tall wayfinding sign. And so number 5 here in the outline is talking about that sign. We want you to remove and dispose of that existing ground-based sign. And then we refer you to section 202 of the specifications so that you know how to account for that being paid, measured and paid. In this location, or with this sign listing, we also mention a separate location. It's about 2 blocks away. So let me highlight that and let me zoom out just a bit. So we were right here talking about sign 3-12. At this intersection here, on this northwest corner of Virginia and Elkhorn, there is another similar sign that we want the contractor to remove. And that's what this detail or this narrative is describing there. So please be aware of those 2 rather large removals, sign removals. There's another pair of sign removals at this location here. Sign number 3-1. There's 2 very short destination signs at the entrance to that parking lot. So we're going to remove the 2 existing destination signs and install a new destination sign there. And so the contractor will be responsible for that. With that, I think well, let's go back to the agenda. Let me stop sharing here. And let's see, go back to this sheet. Okay. So we've run through the project manual, we've run through the project booklet, we've run through the Google Earth file. Now we're kind of wrapping things up with some miscellaneous stuff. Again, just a reminder that there's no group site visit. Visit the site yourself, please, and submit questions by next Thursday in writing. The pre-bid meeting will be recorded. We'll make, as it through an addendum, we'll make sure you know how to access that if you are so inclined. Questions are due by next Thursday, 2 p.m. Bids are due 2 weeks from today, on March 25th. We talked about field fit, important aspects of it being site distance triangles, locations of utilities and irrigation, and the protection of landscaping. Oh, I didn't talk much about protection of landscaping. Because you're working in landscaping beds, we know there's going to be some disturbance, but we're not looking for those beds to be disturbed any more than necessary. What does get disturbed will have to be restored. And that'll be some coordination with our parks folks, Brian Berg to start with. We're mostly concerned about, major damage like scarring trees or knocking them over or, damaging overhead limbs that don't need to be damaged. there is an element of restoring what you disturb. Communication and coordination with public works staff is something that's related to all of that we've talked about. But another element is communication with the community. We are going to be working in at and near a number of driveways, and that's always going to be interfering with somebody else's normal preferred travel path. It's not saying that you can't interfere with that, but we have to be open and communicative with the folks, and making sure that they don't accidentally drive into a work zone or don't get trapped somewhere where they can't get out. We need to maintain access to businesses. We need to maintain access to residences. So those are all important elements of community communication and community coordination. We talked about permits and licenses. We talked about CDOT specs and standards. We talked about the contractor's schedule. I didn't mention weekly progress meetings. That is a standard part of our activities. We like to do those in the field, but particularly during the time that we're going through the submittal process, we're open to doing them in the field or through platforms like this with Zoom, virtual meetings. Submittals right now calls for signed proofs and materials and more. Read that section in the booklet to understand all the details of the submittals. And all of this is going to lead to a successful project complete by May 21. We've picked that target. If you haven't figured it out, we've picked that target date to be in advance of the start of our guest season, Memorial Day weekend. So a week ahead of time, we want to be done. We don't want to have anything to do with trying to deal with holiday weekend guests and the beginning of our summer guest season after that with this signage. So we get to the Q&A period. Now's the time for me to stop talking and let you guys ask questions. How can I help you? Oh, come on, I couldn't have done that good of a job.
David Scott is raising his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right. Obviously, getting up there and seeing this, if the weather turns out like it's supposed to, and we get this gigantic snowstorm, looking a site survey trying to look at some of these places are going to just about be impossible. That's just what I'm getting at, to see what we're up against in some of those beds and everything else, of where the placement of these signs go and the removal of those other ones. It may back us up a little bit, is all I'm looking at for the time to get a bid in, because we're really going to want to see all that stuff. Otherwise, I mean, we'd really have to get up there by tomorrow, is what I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the weather now. Obviously, today's better than tomorrow. Tomorrow's better than the rest of the weekend.
Right, right. So that was the only thing I was kind of getting at. It's like, because if we didn't have time to get up there, it's a lot of that's going to be covered, and we're not going to be able to see what we're up against in some of those locations. If the snowstorm turns out to be what it is, if it doesn't, it's obviously not, it's going to be a moot point. But
well, I guess you all are somewhat on an even ground there. If it turns out to be as bad as it could be, it's going to be, the ground's going to be covered for a long time.
Right.
Right. So you may just have to make a best guess and
Okay.
We can ponder how we might be able to provide some guidance through addenda.
Okay.
If that turns out to be the case.
Right. Okay. All right.
If I may, a lot of those sites, I have some pretty good information on too. So I could help out if we do end up having, 2-3 feet of snow to stick around for a week or more. I'd be happy to, once I'm done plowing, I should say, I'd be happy to meet y'all and discuss matters, because I got a lot of it up in my head, and I can go site to site with folks too if it's needed. So just take down my email and my phone number, and I'll be able to help out the best I can.
Okay. Yeah, just don't plow all the snow in those sites. Don't cover those sites.
If we get that much snow, we're going to be putting snow everywhere.
Right.
David, Travis has his hand up as well.
Okay, thank you. Travis, go ahead.
In response to the question that Scott had in regards to the weather, is it possible, because we're in Colorado Springs, so we do have a slight disadvantage. Is there a way that you guys could maybe take pictures of the sites that we would visit and do that today and tomorrow and use that as part of the addendum and publish the photos so we could at least see the pictures? Maybe that could kind of help everybody without us all trying to race to Estes Park to beat the snow.
Well, to that point, the Google Earth file, the satellite view in the Google Earth file will give you some idea in most locations about what's there or isn't there. There are some locations where the ground is actually obscured by trees. You can do a Google Street View. That's another opportunity to see something that would closely represent what's there now. But to your point about photos, let me see what we can do about, that's a great idea, and let me see what we can do. Right now, those photos don't exist, but we can try to see if we can't make that happen sooner than later.
Thank you.
Other questions? Megan, help me out. I can't see the chat. Were there any chat comments?
It might help if you could stop sharing your screen. I might be able to see a little bit more.
Okay. There we go. Maybe that's why I couldn't see them.
I am not seeing any notes anywhere, or even an opportunity for notes.
Oh, maybe the chat feature didn't exist. I apologize.
I think it exists on a webinar, but maybe not on the meeting.
Ah, okay. I was still learning about this Zoom stuff. Thanks for your patience, everybody. Oh, Justin, I see you're joined us. How about if you introduce yourself real quickly?
You wouldn't unmute. I'm Justin Kearney. I'm the street supervisor for the town of Estes.
Okay. And is there anybody else that's on the call now that didn't get to introduce himself at the beginning of the meeting? Greg.
Thanks, David. I'm Greg Mahone, and I'm the Director of Public Works, working with David and Vanessa on the project. And I have to tell you, David, good job on the presentation and great job on the bid document. My excitement for the project went up again. It's been a year since I've looked at this stuff, and it's going to be a real change and in a positive way for the community. Good job.
Thank you. Look forward to telling the contractor, good job. All right, well, I think that's all I had. If there's no other introductions, is there any other comments or questions by anybody on the call? Well, seeing none, I'll say so long and thank you very much. We look forward to hearing from you through questions and the bid. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Bye-bye.
Bill, did you get your question answered?
No, I'm good. I just
Oh,
don't
okay.
think I didn't have a chance to introduce myself, but that's okay. I'm with ProPrint and Design also.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Welcome.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.